Okay, in this video we'll focus on AQA English Language Paper 2, Question 3. It's well worth looking at the assessment objective for this question before we begin. This question tests the language element of AO2, so how writers use language to achieve effects and influence readers, using relevant subject terminology to support your views. In other words, it wants you to discuss words, phrases, language features, language techniques, or sentence forms. So let's start by reminding ourselves of how question 3 will look on the page of your exam booklet. For this question, you'll be given a short extract of the source material to zoom in on. It will have been chosen to give you plenty of interesting words, phrases, and features to work with. Before you start to answer the question, the best thing to do is reread or skim through the bit of the text you're asked to focus on. You might want to box it off to make sure you stick within the lines stated. There are only 12 marks available for this question, so the examiner isn't expecting an essay. You simply have to pick out roughly 3 interesting bits of language or features of language and focus on those as clearly as you can, and make sure that you're commenting on the effect. And just as you did for Paper 1 Question 2, you're much better off writing about the features that you find particularly interesting. In the time you have for this question, writing about 3 different language features and their effects would be plenty. So let's have a look at the mark scheme for this question. You might notice that it's exactly the same as the Paper 1 AO2 questions. The first bullet point requires you to explain the effect of your chosen word or phrase. In other words, what effect does it have on you as a reader? And remember, there's no right answer. Less is more. Pick out 2 or 3 things that you find interesting from the text and explore them in detail. Secondly, you'll need to select a range of relevant textual detail, or quotes, when you make your point. In reality, a range means 2 or 3 things at the most, so as you go through the source material, highlight the pieces of evidence that you find most interesting. Lastly, we can see from the bottom bullet point in each level that the first thing you need to do is to pick out some of the interesting language or language features, the textual details, and identify them using subject terminology. This just means giving the words or features that you pick out their correct names. It's good to try and know the technique you're writing about, but don't worry if you get the name wrong. You won't lose marks for this, so do have a go. For example, if you explain the effect of a metaphor but you describe it as a simile, you'll still be credited for what you've written. This is because the examiner is interested in and is focusing on the effect of the words you've chosen to write about, and not whether you've correctly labelled a language feature. What this means is you need to think about how the different examples of language that you've chosen affect you personally, because you are the reader. This is the real test of your reading skill, as it's asking you to write down how you respond to those words or features. The effect, with an E, is how you are affected, with an A. So, a comment on effect is not about what a word or phrase means or implies. It's about what's in your imagination when you read certain words in a beautiful description, or how you feel when you read the interesting features in the diary entry or newspaper article, or what you're thinking of when you read particular phrases in a persuasive letter. If you talk about this, then you're really analysing and showing AO2 skill. Okay, we'll leave it there. Here are our top tips for success on AQA Paper 2 Question 3. Reread or skim through the bit of the text you're asked to focus on, and consider drawing a box around it. Look for language you find particularly interesting, and remember you're writing about the effect of this language, meaning how it makes you feel or what it makes you imagine. Try to name the language features you're writing in depth about, but don't stress about it, and around 3 well-explored pieces of language is enough to do well. Now, why not take a look at the source material in the AQA style Paper 2 attached to this pod, or watch the example responses pod for this question. Good luck!